Really focusing on the meaning of the prayers that we recite regularly can sometimes bring a different definition to the things that we have otherwise taken for granted. We think the prayers say one thing, and then we read them in Hebrew, and not discerning really through the meaning of the words, because sometimes the words themselves or the roots of the words themselves are so opaque and thick that they're not obvious. But when we look over on the other side of the page, we see the English sometimes, maybe even often, we're startled. One example of this is in the Shma, which we had in last week's Torah portion. In the second paragraph of the Shma, that which begins with V'haya, and it shall come to pass, is found in this week's Torah portion called Ekev. And this second paragraph of the Shma is usually not read aloud in any synagogue. Oftentimes the first paragraph V'ahavta is, oftentimes the third paragraph Vayomer is. Rarely, if ever, is that second or middle paragraph uttered aloud, and the reason becomes obvious if you look at the English. It contains powerful, painful passages which talk about the punishments that we're going to receive if we do not respect God. Similarly, we talk about, in that same paragraph, the wonderful and powerful blessings that we'll receive, but it's the first issue that causes us to always read it quietly, silently, because God forbid any of those things should come to pass. The curse that is in there is essentially, if you don't follow my commandments, says God, I'm going to dry up the land. Your crops wither, and ultimately, of course, when those things happen, we will die. There's a story, not so far-fetched, about a heretic approached a famous rabbi and said, Rabbi, I'm a heretic, I'm an atheist, I don't believe in any of this stuff, and I've read the second paragraph of the Shema, that which tells us about the punishments that are going to happen to us, and obviously because I'm a heretic, and God has not punished me that way, it just isn't true. And the rabbi, a true defender of the faith, responded by saying, well, at some point, because you even know what it means, you must have been true to the prayers, and it's on that merit and that merit alone that God is not giving you those punishments. It may be a reasonable argument back to the heretic, but a little unsatisfying, at least to this person. Maimonides also comments on the same thing, and he says that, well, the punishment that is reflected in this paragraph V'haya refers to the punishments, A, that will be meted out in the future world, or have already been dispensed to the Jewish people in the past. What Rambam, Maimonides, argues, in essence, is that if we have not been punished or blessed in this world for what we've done or not done, it will come after we have died and passed into the next realm. Or it may mean, says the same figure, says Rambam, that we may have been punished or blessed for these things as they've already transpired well in the past. Say, for example, on Tisha B'Av, we memorialized the destruction of the first and the second temple. Perhaps our sinfulness was meted out in the punishment that was collectively given to us on those very terrible moments, Tisha B'Av. But I'm going to postulate another avenue of approach, V'haya im Shemoa. If you hearken to these words, I will bless you. If you don't, I will curse you. Perhaps the words themselves are the punishment and the blessing enough. Perhaps by not following God's words, we've already become punished. We've become a leper in our own eyes. The lack of self-love, the lack of self-respect, the understanding that we've become the heretic that we would otherwise have blandished, we would otherwise have said is a terrible person if we were anyone but that person, is the punishment that has been meted out. Our shoots have dried up. Our land has become desiccated. We have become less than nothing in the process. And perhaps in the same breath, for those of us who respect the power of God's ordinances, God blesses us with such strength and resilience that we become like the sapling that cannot be blown down by any howling wind, that we are so resilient and strong and full of energy. You can translate that as full of self-love, full of self-respect, full of goodness, that we become a towering mountain of power that no one can conquer. Maybe, just maybe, those blessings and the curses become actualized in the very moment that we realize who we are, what we do, and by the same fact, what we don't do. Maybe the punishments and the blessings are more real than we'd otherwise imagine. Wishing you a beautiful Shabbat, a Shabbat of blessing, a Shabbat of wholeness, a Shabbat of becoming you.